3 nights, 3 different witnesses, and every one of them described the exact same woman standing on the same abandoned road. They had never met each other, yet every detail matched. What happened on Black Pine Road still terrifies locals today.
October 2019. There's an abandoned stretch of road in rural Ohio that locals avoid after midnight. They call it Black Pine Road. Some believe the stories are just urban legends. Others refuse to drive there, no matter the reason. According to one witness report, the first terrifying encounter happened just after 1 a.m. 32-year-old truck driver Daniel Harper had just finished a late-night delivery and was heading home. The road was completely empty. No traffic, no streetlights, only the sound of his engine cutting through the darkness. Then he saw her, a woman standing perfectly still on the side of the road. She was barefoot, wearing an old white dress. Her head was lowered, hiding her face. At first, Daniel thought she might be stranded or injured. He slowed his truck, rolled down the window, and asked, "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need help?" No answer, not even a movement. Then very slowly, she lifted her head. Daniel's heart nearly stopped. Her skin was unnaturally pale. And her eyes? They were completely black. No white, no pupils, just 2 dark, empty voids staring directly at him. Panic took over. Daniel slammed on the gas and sped away without looking back. For nearly 2 miles, he kept driving, trying to convince himself that what he had seen couldn't be real. Finally, he glanced into his rearview mirror. What he saw froze him with fear. The same woman was standing directly behind his truck, watching him. But there was only one impossible problem. His truck was moving at nearly 70 miles per hour. The next morning, Daniel reported the incident to local police. Officers searched the entire area. They found no footprints, no missing person, no evidence that anyone had been there at all. After that night, Daniel never drove on Black Pine Road again. But his story wasn't the last. 2 nights later, someone else reported seeing the exact same woman. 2 nights later, another driver would experience something even more terrifying. His name was Michael Carter, a 41-year-old delivery driver. Unlike Daniel, Michael had never heard the stories about Black Pine Road. To him, it was simply the fastest route home. At exactly 12:47 a.m., his GPS directed him onto the lonely road. For the first few minutes, everything seemed completely normal. Then, without warning, his headlights began to flicker. The radio filled with loud static before shutting off completely. A few seconds later, the engine lost power. The truck rolled to a stop in the middle of the road. Michael turned the key again. Nothing. Again, nothing. Only the sound of the starter clicking over and over. He reached for his phone. No signal, not a single bar. Then, he heard it. A deep cracking sound. The enormous pine trees surrounding the road began swaying violently. Even though the air was completely still, branches snapped one after another. Leaves exploded across the pavement. It sounded as if something massive was forcing its way through the forest. Michael locked every door. His breathing became heavier. He stared through the windshield, waiting. Then, a figure slowly stepped out from between the trees. A woman, barefoot, wearing the same old white dress. She wasn't walking. She seemed to glide across the road without making a single sound. Michael squeezed his eyes shut for just 1 second. When he looked again, she was gone. Relieved, he tried the ignition one last time. The engine started instantly. Without thinking, he slammed his foot on the accelerator. He didn't stop driving until he reached the nearest gas station. When he finally stepped out of the truck, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Across the passenger side door were 5 long scratches, as if someone, or something, had dragged razor-sharp fingers across the metal. Michael never found out where those marks came from. But after hearing Daniel's story the following week, he realized one terrifying detail. They had both described the exact same woman. 3 nights, 3 different drivers. None of them knew each other. Yet every one of them described the same woman. After the second report, local deputies decided they couldn't ignore Black Pine Road any longer. On the 3rd night, Deputy Ethan Brooks volunteered to investigate. He wasn't looking for ghosts. He expected to find teenagers, trespassers, or someone playing a cruel prank. At 12:35 a.m., his patrol car entered Black Pine Road. His dashboard camera was recording. The body camera on his uniform was recording. Everything was normal. Until exactly 12:51 a.m. The radio cut out. Static filled the speaker. Then silence. Moments later, every light on the patrol car flickered at the same time. Ethan stopped the vehicle. As he stepped outside, the forest became unnaturally quiet. No wind, no insects, no birds, just complete silence. His flashlight swept across the trees. Nothing. Then, he noticed something in the distance. A woman, standing in the middle of the road, barefoot, an old white dress, her head lowered. Ethan called out, "Police, stay where you are!" She didn't move. He took another step, then another. She remained completely still. Suddenly, his flashlight went out for 2 long seconds. Everything was pitch black. When the flashlight came back, the woman was gone. But she wasn't far away. She was now standing beside the patrol car. Ethan immediately reached for his radio. Nothing, only static. He backed away slowly. Then something caught his attention. On the edge of the road, half buried beneath the dirt, was an old wooden cross. Attached to it was a rusted metal plaque. He brushed away the dirt. The words were barely readable. Emily Carter, born 1992, died October 18, 2019. Underneath, someone had scratched 4 chilling words. She never made it home. At that exact moment, a freezing gust of wind rushed through the trees. The flashlight died again. When it finally came back on, the cross was gone. The plaque was gone. And the woman was standing only a few feet away. Her face was pale. Her eyes were completely black. She slowly raised one hand and pointed deeper into the forest. It all began in October of 2021. Just outside Chicago, Illinois, stood an aging 12-story apartment building known as Maple Heights Apartments. From the outside, it looked completely ordinary. Families lived there. College students rented small units. Retired couples spent quiet evenings on their balconies. No one would have guessed that one apartment inside the building had become the center of one of the city's strangest mysteries. Apartment 9B. Locals whispered about it. Some called it cursed. Others believed someone had died there long before the building was ever constructed, but no one had any proof. What they did know was that 2 people had already lost their lives inside that apartment. The first victim was Emily Hart, a 34-year-old elementary school teacher. She moved into apartment 9B in 2017. Emily was known as a cheerful, healthy woman with no major medical problems. One Monday morning, she never showed up for work. Her co-workers couldn't reach her. After several unanswered calls, they requested a welfare check. Police forced open the apartment door. Emily was lying motionless on the bedroom floor. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing had been stolen. No signs of a struggle. The medical examiner ruled her death as sudden cardiac arrest. The case was officially closed within days. Most people accepted the explanation, but a few neighbors believed something wasn't right. 2 years later, apartment 9B was rented again, this time by Daniel Brooks, a 29-year-old software engineer. Daniel lived alone. He worked from home. According to neighbors, he rarely left the apartment except to buy groceries. Then late one night, residents heard a loud crash outside the building. The next morning, Daniel's body was found in the courtyard below his balcony. Investigators believed he had fallen from the 10th floor. Some called it suicide. Others believed it was simply a tragic accident. Once again, there wasn't enough evidence to prove otherwise. The investigation ended. Apartment 9B became vacant for nearly a year. No one wanted to rent it. Rumors spread throughout the building. People claimed they heard knocking sounds coming from the walls late at night. Some said the kitchen lights turned on by themselves. Others swore they heard footsteps inside the apartment even when it was empty. None of those stories were ever confirmed. Most people dismissed them as urban legends. Then, in the summer of 2021, a 28-year-old emergency room nurse named Sarah Miller signed the lease. She laughed when the property manager mentioned the rumors. She told her friends, "If ghosts were real, I'd probably meet them at the hospital before I met them here." For the first few weeks, everything seemed perfectly normal. Until one night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., Sarah woke up to a strange sound. Knock, knock, knock. It wasn't coming from the front door. It wasn't coming from the window. The sound was coming from inside the bedroom wall. She assumed it was old plumbing. The building maintenance team inspected every pipe. They found absolutely nothing. Then things became even stranger. Every morning, one kitchen drawer was open. Sarah was certain she had closed it before going to bed. At first, she blamed herself. Maybe she simply forgot. But it happened again and again. Finally, she decided to set up her phone to record the apartment while she was at work. 8 hours later, she watched the footage. Nothing unusual happened until exactly 2:17 a.m. The video suddenly froze. The screen went completely black for 5 seconds. Then, the recording resumed by itself. No movement, no explanation, just 5 missing seconds. Concerned, Sarah went to the local police station. The officer on duty suggested it was probably an electrical issue. She returned home that evening, still believing there had to be a logical explanation. She had no idea. It would be the last night of her life. The following morning, neighbors reported that Sarah hadn't answered her phone or opened her door. Police forced their way inside apartment 9B. Sarah Miller was found dead in her bed. No visible injuries, no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints other than her own. Everything looked completely normal, except for one thing. On the bedroom wall, written in thick black letters, were 3 chilling words. "Don't open it!" Detectives searched every inch of the apartment, but they never found the marker used to write the message. And that's when they realized this wasn't another ordinary death. It was the beginning of something far more disturbing. Sarah Miller's death changed everything. This time, the Chicago Police Department refused to close the case without answers. Detective Marcus Reed, a homicide investigator with nearly 20 years of experience, was assigned to apartment 9B. He had solved dozens of murder cases. He didn't believe in ghosts. He believed every mystery had a human explanation. The first thing Reed did was reopen the files of the previous 2 deaths. Emily Hart, Daniel Brooks, Sarah Miller, 3 victims, 3 different occupations, 3 completely different lives. At first, there seemed to be absolutely no connection between them. No family ties, no shared friends, no financial records linking them together, nothing. But Detective Reed noticed something strange. Every victim had lived in apartment 9B for almost the exact same amount of time. Around 43 days. Not 40, not 45, exactly 43 days. Before they died. It was too precise to be a coincidence. Reed requested the building's maintenance records dating back nearly 10 years. Hours later, another disturbing detail appeared. Every victim had filed the exact same maintenance complaint. Not about broken windows, not about leaking pipes. Each of them reported a strange stain slowly spreading across the bedroom wall. Maintenance workers always painted over it. Within days, the stain disappeared. No one ever asked why it kept returning. Detective Reed wasn't interested in the stain itself. He wanted to know what was behind that wall. The building manager refused permission to damage the apartment. But after receiving a court order, the police removed a section of the bedroom drywall. Behind it, they found something nobody expected. Not a body, not bones, not hidden money. Instead, they discovered a narrow metal compartment built inside the wall decades earlier. Inside the compartment were 3 objects: an old apartment key, a faded photograph, and a small notebook covered in dust. The photograph showed the building under construction in the late 1980s. Standing in front of it was a construction supervisor named Richard Lawson. The notebook belonged to him. Its first pages contained ordinary construction notes, measurements, material lists, daily work schedules. But near the end, the writing became completely different. Richard claimed he had secretly built a hidden maintenance passage connecting several apartment walls. The passage was never included on the official blueprints. He wrote that only one person knew it existed: himself. Detective Reed suddenly realized something. If someone else had discovered that hidden passage, they could enter apartment 9B without ever using the front door, without leaving signs of forced entry, without appearing on hallway security cameras. For the first time, the impossible deaths finally had a logical explanation. But one question remained. Who else knew about the hidden passage? And why had every victim died exactly 43 days after moving in? As investigators searched deeper into Richard Lawson's past, they uncovered a name that had never appeared in any police report. A former maintenance employee who had disappeared from the city just weeks after the first death. And at that moment, Detective Reed realized the killer might still be alive. Detective Marcus Reed finally found the missing maintenance worker. His name was Thomas Grady. He wasn't dead. He wasn't missing. For nearly 20 years, he had been living under a different identity in another state. When detectives arrested him, he denied everything, until forensic investigators made one final discovery inside apartment 9B. Behind the hidden maintenance passage, they found a narrow ventilation shaft. Inside it, were tiny traces of a rare industrial chemical. The chemical wasn't strong enough to kill someone immediately, but with repeated exposure over several weeks, it slowly damaged the heart. It left almost no evidence after death. The medical reports from all 3 victims suddenly made sense. Each victim had lived in the apartment for exactly 43 days. That was how long it took the poison to become fatal. Detectives searched Thomas Grady's old storage unit. Inside, they found blueprints of the apartment building. Every hidden passage was carefully marked. There was also a notebook. On one page, 3 apartment numbers were crossed out. Only one remained. Apartment 9B. Another page contained a sentence investigators would never forget. People only fear ghosts because they never suspect the living. Thomas finally confessed. Years earlier, he had used the hidden passage to enter empty apartments for theft. One night, a tenant unexpectedly returned home and recognized him. In panic, Thomas released the industrial chemical into the ventilation shaft. The tenant died weeks later. Police ruled it a natural death. Thomas realized he had committed the perfect crime. After that, every new tenant who moved into apartment 9B became another experiment. No fingerprints, no forced entry, no obvious cause of death, just another unexplained tragedy. For years, everyone blamed ghosts. They blamed curses. They blamed the apartment itself. But the real monster had never lived inside the walls. He had simply hidden behind them. Thomas Grady was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Apartment 9B was permanently sealed. Months later, the entire building was demolished. Today, nothing remains except an empty piece of land, but investigators still call it one of the most carefully planned serial murder cases they had ever seen.